What's up, you guys? Welcome back to In Totality. I'm your host, Megan Ashley, and obviously you can see it's Christmas time. I got my trees up, I got my decorations, the vibe is set. Christmas time is my favorite time of the year, so I'm super excited to have some Christmas lights and all the things. But welcome back to another episode. I'm so excited today because I have a guest that it's so crazy. This is the first time we've seen each other in person, but we have been friends for 3 years, right? Since 2020. We met in 2020, and we'll tell you guys all about that. But please welcome my guest. Sara Lovestyle is here.
Thank you, Megan. Thank you for having me.
Virtual claps. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You jumped on that plane last night, got here this morning at like 1:00 and booked it over here. I'm so thankful.
You know, when God moves and your friend calls and, again, we'll talk about how we met, but the fact that it's taken us 3 years and we finally get to talk about our testimony and the journey from where we've been, how we met, and to now.
It's crazy.
It's been a crazy ride.
It's crazy. And you know what though? Like, I'm so thankful that God preserved that time for now.
Yes.
I feel like this was the right setting for
It had to be
this, right?
It had to be now.
So I'm so excited. So tell us, give our audience, you do all the things. You are like a serial entrepreneur. You are a social media influencer. You do all the things. So give our audience kind of a background about you, and then we'll do some rapid fire questions to kind of do some icebreakers, and then we'll go into all the things.
Well, off camera, we were talking about our 23andMe. So I'm Ethiopian, and we'll talk some more about our disappointments or excitements of our 23s.
I know. We got to talk about that.
But I'm a serial entrepreneur, tech investor, angel investor, content creator, influencer, mama of two, a special needs mom, and it's been a heck of a journey.
Yeah.
It's been a journey.
So Sara makes social media look so easy. I'm like, she has reels every other hour. I'm like, how do you have time to do all of those, like the social media? I am the worst at content, so it's just not my wheelhouse, but you just make it look so easy.
One, shout out to Jocelyn, who's my social media manager. We have it down to a science now. We shoot 20 videos in a day for all 7 platforms.
No way.
And it's, unless there's like a specific trend that requires my attention right then and there. No, we're shooting them once a week because I'm a mom. I can't shoot every day.
Right.
But I know that I can dedicate 1 day a week while the kids are in school. Those are 6 to 8 hours that I shoot content.
And you just shoot it all day.
All of it.
And then who edits the content for it? Do you have someone that edits, or do you do it yourself?
Jocelyn and I edit all the content.
Nice. And then you just schedule it out.
Scheduled. Gotta have a system. I have systems for my personal life and for my work life.
Can you give me the system? Can you give me the
we can talk about
so
it
I could just duplicate that. Thank you. Okay, so I have some icebreaker questions.
Okay.
And actually, I pulled up the wrong one. Hold on. Okay. So, favorite quote.
Recently I heard a quote that messed me up, and I don't know where it came from, but it said the areas of your life where you worry the most is where you trust God the least. And it rocked me.
Wow.
And I was like, all right, God, I hear you. I surrender.
Wow.
Okay, you can have it.
The areas where you worry the most are the areas where you trust God the least. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised? Did you have to think about what those areas were, and were you surprised?
I knew.
You knew.
I knew. It'd been something that I was worried about for a solid 8 months, kept me up at night for months.
And look at God be like, let it go.
Let it go.
Let it go. I love that.
Because we got to find out. Sis? He said faith of a mustard seed. You don't even have that. I was like, you know what? Leave me alone.
You said, okay. It's like God be beating me up. It's like, leave me alone, for sure. We got to figure out who wrote that quote, because that's a good one. I have to add that to my list. I love quotes. I have this folder in my notes, and it's just all quotes that I see that I love, or even quotes that I come up with myself, or little things that I think of and I just put them in. I just love quotes. Quotes are a thing for me. Okay. Favorite ice cream.
Jenny's ice cream. It's their,
brown butter brittle thing.
It's like a blondie ice cream. It's so good.
Jenny's has the best ice cream. Shout out to Ohio, because that's where Jenny's originated.
Also, I'm lactose intolerant, but I do risk it all. So, it's good.
For sure. I think everyone's lactose intolerant. I feel like everyone has some of that in there. Okay. Recent book.
Ooh, I was reading, or I am currently rereading, The Winner by Tim Grover.
Okay. The Winner by Tim Grover.
So good.
Is it good?
So
What is it
good.
about?
It's the mentality of a winner. Like,
Mm,
how badly do you want to win? And
mm,
as somebody who I am very competitive, typically with myself, but I
mhm,
am very competitive. And I say that I want to be great.
mhm,
And I say that I want to accomplish all these things.
mhm,
But am I truly built for it? And do I
mm,
truly want to do the work? And do I have the mental strength that I think
mhm.
I have to create or to be great?
Yeah.
And so he talks about training like Michael Jordan and training Kobe Bryant and that Mamba
Mm,
mentality. And everyone wants to be Kobe and says they want the Mamba mentality, but you don't understand. He sacrificed everything
everything.
for
Yeah.
greatness. How
Yeah.
bad do I want to win?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay if the answer is I don't want to win that bad.
Because I was getting ready to say, I think when I think about that, like coming into this space of being an entrepreneur, like, first of all, I've never had to do anything on my own or be responsible for myself on my own. I was married at 20.
Yep.
I went from my mom's house to
Same.
marriage. You know, you had the similar
Same.
experience. So I never had to like be responsible for myself.
Yeah.
And I don't feel I've never felt like I had that like innate entrepreneur thing in me.
Mhm.
Like I love being a part of a team. I love serving. I don't want to be the face of anything. I don't really want to be responsible for all of it. And so it's just not my thing.
Yeah.
But it's finding that balance because just because it's not something that's comfortable for me doesn't mean that that's not what God has called me to do.
Correct.
And so it has to find the balance. But there are some things where I'm like, when it comes to my kids, I think I was willing to risk time with them and a lot of stuff before, like when I first moved here.
Yeah.
And now these are certain things I'm just not willing to risk anymore. I'm
Mhm.
not willing to sacrifice the things that I can't really get back. You know what I mean? Like time with them. And,
Correct.
it's just like, I don't know if I want to risk that.
It's scary because
Yeah.
there are decisions that I have to make in order to create the kind of generational wealth and the kind of life that I want to build for myself and hopefully a testimony that I can tell 60 years from now.
Mhm.
It requires sacrifices, and sometimes I have to be okay with them when they
Mhm.
don't feel good
Yeah.
or decide not to do it
And be okay
and
with
be
that.
okay with it and not have the
Mhm.
guilt of, okay, I want to be great, but maybe I don't want to be great that bad. So am I being lazy?
Mhm. Right.
Is
Because
that an
it's
excuse?
the extremes. And I live in those extremes too. I'm
Yes.
like, if I don't do anything, I'm lazy.
Yep.
If I do everything, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
really hard to find. It's hard to find that balance. We'll talk about that more too. Okay. Recent lesson. What's a recent lesson you feel like you've learned?
I am not in control. I'm a Capricorn, if you believe in that thing. I am very structured with my life
Mhm.
and I am not in control.
Mm.
I don't like that feeling.
It's the worst.
It
It's
is
the worst.
very humbling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, not being in control.
Yeah. Okay. Recent lesson. I like that. I feel like that kind of aligns with my recent lesson. My recent lesson has been more about trusting God for like the daily bread. So that's been my recent lesson. I'm still trying to mull over all the things with that. But so yeah, so Sarah and I met in 2020
During the pandemic.
during the pandemic. It was right after I moved to Atlanta. And I'm sure you guys probably remember this is when Clubhouse.
Yep. Shout out to
was-
Clubhouse. It was solid for about a month.
I mean, a solid month, maybe two. I'll give them 2 months. Like Clubhouse was like crack. It felt like everybody was on it. I woke up to Clubhouse. I went to sleep to Clubhouse.
Folks were getting 2 phones so that they could actually work and live life.
It was crazy. Like Clubhouse was crazy. And we were in a room that a friend of mine had. I think it was Bree. She had a room. I think that she was doing something every Wednesday.
Mhm.
And it was just all women,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs. And she invited me to come into the room, and I was in there, and I think I got on stage where we could talk. And I don't even know what I talked about. I think I might have talked about Caleb or something
Yep.
like that. And you said something to me and you were like, you have to tell your story more. You have to talk about this more. You have to, like, you were so encouraging. I don't know how we sidebar. I don't know if you said it on while we were in that room or if you reached out to me. I know we reached out to each other afterwards, but I know there was a moment where we talked and you were so encouraging. And from that moment on, you shared some of your story with me and we just kind of connected and clicked. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's literally going through the same thing I'm going through.
I don't find, because I heard you tell your testimony and you said it really quickly and you kind of like, you were teetering between whether or not you should share it and how you should share it. And so I quickly hopped on, said something quickly, and then I DM'd you. And it was important because there's not a lot of sisterhood in autism, and there isn't a sisterhood amongst Black women who have children with autism.
Yeah.
There just weren't.
Yeah.
I couldn't name 5 people that could support me or show me or navigate the space. I was learning it in real time without any help and any guidance. And so then when you were like, I think I want to talk about it, I'm like, please do, because we need to hear it. And it's something crazy, like 1 in 45 Black boys are being diagnosed. We're the highest diagnosed.
Boys.
But I can't name 5 families. How is that possible?
Because we're not talking about it.
We're not talking.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me what has been, because I want to know your journey with this and all the things, because our stories are very similar.
For better, for worse.
For better, for worse. You and you can kind of share it in your own words, but we both have children with autism, a child with autism, both boys.
Yes.
And Josiah is how old?
He's 13.
Josiah is 13 and Caleb is 11. And we also are newly single moms.
Yeah.
So
what a time.
I'm like,
what a time to be alive.
This is us. So kind of give us some story about how we got here, just with you. Like, how did Sara end up here? Serial entrepreneur, capitalist, all these things. How do we get here?
Part of it almost has to go all the way back. So I was born in a refugee camp in Sudan. My parents both left war-torn Ethiopia back in the 80s. And they met there, got married, then they have me. And I have known since I was a child that my story, my life would be different. I've always known. Now, what I will say is there are a few lessons and experiences that God could have just skipped over and bypassed.
For sure.
Like, I didn't need to know that lesson. Or could you have taught it to me in a different way?
Yeah, for sure.
But born in a refugee camp. And then, I got married at 23, had my son a while later. And I had a heart attack at 23, 6 days after my son was born. And I'm like, okay, God, I hear you. I see you. And what's wild is I'm glad it happened because it really woke me up to, I was losing myself in marriage. I was losing myself in the process of what my ex-husband did for work. I was trying to navigate my purpose and who I was supposed to be in my place in the world. And also I was heavy and it was not the baby's fault. It was me. I was fat. It just is what it is. Like I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I had to get my health in order.
For sure. No, I get it.
And so I'm glad it happened the way that it did. And then in 2019, I launched Sara Lovestyle.
Wow.
And the reason why I launched it is, to be honest, I was angry. I was having a conversation with God, and I'm not asking why me with Josiah's diagnosis. I'm not asking, I know like Josiah was meant for me. I was meant for this journey. I am built for this life and I'm built to lead it with him. But I was suing the county where I lived, and what do you want me to do with this? And I don't know if I'm allowed to be at the time like angry with God, but I need you to guide me.
Yeah.
You didn't give this to me for no reason. What is the purpose? What am I not seeing? What are you protecting me from? But what is happening right now? And God did not give me the coddle answer that I was hoping for. I was hoping for my daughter with whom I'm well pleased. No. He was like, sis, he may not have a voice, but you do, and you're wasting it. I didn't make you for this. You weren't built for this. And I'm like, dang, you could
Yeah.
have left me alone. Just give me a softer answer, like rocked me. It'll be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And then went through a just kind of a journey and storyboarded and tried to figure out what my purpose was supposed to be and who am I in this moment,
Mhm.
because I just really lost myself again.
Mhm.
And that's where Sara Lovestyle started, is because how do I live my life and how do I show up in the world every day? And
Mm.
my lifestyle is to show up in love.
Yeah.
My hope is that when anyone meets me or they come to my page, that they feel loved and seen and
Mm.
heard, and that they feel compassion. And so those are all the things that encompass who I am.
Yeah.
And so that's where the brand started. And then, just because God got jokes, a couple months after that, my entire world is shattered.
After launching Sara Lovestyle.
3 months later. And I'm now filing for divorce.
Jesus.
So I had the most extraordinary time of my life and my career,
Mhm.
while simultaneously going through the worst time of my life.
So professionally, you were on the income.
Soaring.
Yeah.
And it happened fast.
Mm.
Fast.
Yeah.
All of it at the same time. And then
Yeah.
a month later, I get my first tech investment. And then a couple weeks after that, I get an opportunity to work with a company. They couldn't afford to pay me. And so I made a joke of, hey, I'll take equity. And
Mm.
then less than a year later, they exit. And I was like, okay, I can do this journey differently. I was like, God, I see the
Wow.
vision. I see
Wow.
where I'm supposed to go. I'm not supposed to go the typical influencer path. I can forge my own lane, and you're going to
Yeah.
help me as long as I know that I follow you.
Yeah.
But woo, it was ugly for a second.
So, okay, so go back. You said you were sued in the county that you lived in.
I was suing our county. Yeah.
You were suing the county.
Yeah.
You were suing them for
Josiah.
Josiah's behalf because of educational purposes.
Correct.
So this is always interesting to me because when I was going through the journey with Caleb and going through an IEP and what does that look like, a lot of people don't know that that is a legal binding document between you and the school board.
Correct.
Or the county. Right? And you don't have to agree to anything you don't want to agree to.
No.
And that's just something that if I could advocate for parents, because you don't know and they don't tell you that.
No.
They sit you down and they're like, okay, this is the IEP. Like they don't tell you that this is actually a legal binding document.
Correct.
And if you don't like anything on here, you don't have to agree to it. And it's the school's responsibility or the school board or the county's responsibility to make sure that they have what your child needs to be properly educated. And if they are not, then they have to pay for your child to get private education.
Correct.
That is what an IEP is.
Yep.
And if you have a child with special needs, this is something that you need to know. And they don't tell you that. But I had to know because another mom was trying to sue her county and had to get a lawyer.
Yep.
And she told me because I was complaining about one of Caleb's IEP meetings. And it's just sad that people don't know that.
The process made me a wolf. It actually made me a really great CEO, that process with Josiah. Because there's nobody else I'm going to advocate for more than my children.
No one. And
the reality is I'm allowed to say no. And you think that folks have your best interest in mind, and they don't.
You think that educators have your child's best interest in mind.
Respectfully,
respectfully, they always don't. Because there is a system. And I understand that the teachers and the educators, it's not always their fault because it's the system.
Yes.
But you have to know what you're going up against.
I say no a lot.
Oh, I am a bulldog.
And I demand a lot.
100%.
I demand PT, OT, speech, vision, everything that is available to him that he needs. I will advocate for, and you will give it to him.
And you will. So I'm going to give you an example of a really bad IEP meeting that I had. Caleb is completely nonverbal, right? So Caleb can sing. Like he can say words when he sings, but when it's just like a conversation, he's not going to talk. He'll say a few words here and there, but he's just not going to say them fluidly.
Sure.
Right. And so this is when Caleb was in probably maybe first grade. No, what is he in now? Fifth. So yeah, maybe around first grade. And they were trying to give Caleb more PT time, so physical education
Mm-hmm.
time, than speech time. They were trying to give Caleb 30 minutes of speech a week. 30 minutes a week.
No.
Not 30 minutes a day.
No.
30 minutes a week.
No.
I did everything but flip the tables in there.
Uh-huh.
I said, this don't even make sense.
No, make it make sense for me though.
Yeah, tell me how a child that is nonverbal needs more physical education time than speech time.
Mm-hmm.
So again, to your point, I said no. Y'all figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
This is absolutely unacceptable.
Yep.
My child needs at least 30 minutes per day
Correct.
of speech therapy
Yep.
per day. And if you're not willing to give that to him, or you don't have the capacity to, then you will be paying for his speech therapy outside of that.
Find someone who will. I always say, so I remember one of the counties that I lived in saying, we're the educators, like we know best. And I'm like, I have a PhD in my son.
Period.
You do not know my son better than I do.
Yep.
And you never will.
Yep.
So you can't tell me. You can give me recommendations, but you can't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell me what he needs when I know what he needs.
Yeah.
And we moved around quite a bit. And so, it's even where I live now in LA, having to explain and do evaluations over and over and over again to prove that he needs said services. I remember going through this thing with LAUSD, and actually, I was like, you know what? Let's do this. Let's sit down. You need to obviously meet him, because the reality is I wouldn't be asking you for these things if he did not need it. And I wish he didn't. Not that I wish it, but if he didn't need them, I wouldn't be bothering you. I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to be bothering you. Yeah. And I don't want you bothering me. If he did not need it, I would not be asking you for these particular services. And so it is a journey. It is, like you said, it's made me a dog.
Yeah. So what age did Josiah get diagnosed?
He was 4.
Okay. So tell
me.
me.
And I had to fight for the diagnosis.
Really? Mm-hmm. So how did you know, walk me through that process. Did you notice some delays in him, and then you brought it up to your pediatrician?
Yeah. Well, and here's the crazy thing. When he was diagnosed, autism was not considered a medical diagnosis yet. So it wasn't even covered by insurance. I had to get a private doctor to diagnose him, which is frustrating in and of itself, because now if you're a parent and you can't afford to do those outside services, that's asking a lot of parents. And then once they hit about 7, it's considered pre-existing with some insurances. So then you can't get the services the child needs after they're 7. That's what it was back then when he was diagnosed. But no, there were speech delays. He wouldn't really look at me in the eyes. There were social delays. I knew early that something was wrong. My journey isn't typical where he was talking at 2 or 3 and then there was the regression. He just was nonverbal the whole time. And
same
so
with Caleb too.
I knew. I knew something was wrong. And for me, it was do no harm. Let's get a diagnosis and get him all the – I dove into Josiah and making sure that he had everything he needed to be a successful
Were you working
child.
At the time, or were you a stay-at-home mom?
I was a stay-at-home mom.
Wow. Okay. So Caleb, when we got his Caleb always gave us good eye contact. Ever since he came out the womb, he was like,
"Hi, y'all."
Eye contact, these piercing blue eyes. And but his motor skills were very delayed. Certain things that babies just gravitate to as they're developing, toys and things, he didn't really gravitate towards those things. And like I said, his motor skills were just very slow. He didn't want to roll over. He didn't want to crawl. Caleb didn't really crawl until he was 1.
Josiah didn't walk until he was 2.
Yeah. It was Caleb was around 1.5. And mind you, this is the child I prayed for.
You're going to make me cry.
This is the child I prayed for. And I remember getting the diagnosis and feeling guilty because I forced this kid here. And I remember how that guilt, hitting me so hard because I had begged God for this child. I wanted him so bad, and I wanted him for selfish reasons, to be honest. I wanted him because I had Eli out of wedlock and I was finally married, so I could do it right this time. And when we got the diagnosis, I just remember feeling so guilty and really remember feeling scared because I don't know what autism is,
Correct.
and I don't know what this means.
Yep.
And then when they bring you in to tell you that your child now, not a social worker, but you know how they have like a county person assigned to them to help them get their needs, met as far as certain services and stuff that the county provides. Because our county in Columbus provided some services, and it was like, Help Me Grow. That's what it was called. It was called Help Me Grow, but it only went up until a certain age.
Yeah, usually it's 3.
3, yeah. So they bring us into this room, and you can tell me if your experience was similar, but they brought us into this room, and she went down the list of all the things Caleb will never do. He'll never graduate on time.
Yep.
He probably won't have any friends. Yep. He'll probably live with you his entire life. Yep. He won't be able to do anything on his own.
Oh, I'm gonna cry. Yep.
And it was nothing positive.
No.
There's no hope.
No.
Sorry, your kid is, not what you thought it was going to be.
Correct.
Your entire world just comes crashing down.
Correct.
And people, I had put this out a long time ago, and there were some people that kind of got offended by it. But until you know what it's like, until you lived it, you'll understand. But it is like grieving a death every day.
Yeah.
And you have to see this death every day. Because when you have a child, you aren't thinking the worst is going to happen. You think the best. When you're pregnant with this child, you think of all the great things. Yeah. They're going to play football and the basketball games and prom and homecoming and birthday parties.
Oh, I had it all planned out.
Sleepovers, and then you get into this room with this professional that tells you none of that is going to happen.
Yep.
So just make the best of his life. Make him comfortable. Yeah. He's not going to be smart. He's not going to learn anything. And just, this is your life.
When I was 15, I heard the sermon, Pastor Casey Treat in Seattle, where I'm from, preached a sermon on King Josiah. And he was the youngest king. He was 9. And the Bible says that there was no one like him, and there would never be anyone like him. And I was like, one day, I cannot wait. And I knew my firstborn was going to be a boy, and I was going to name him Josiah. And so when you say that you prayed, I prayed for him. I was prepared for him. I was ready for him. I knew exactly what his life would be and where he would go. And I had planned it all out. And when I was pregnant, I remember I was at a wedding, and I had actually been told he was going to be a girl. And then they told me he was actually going to have Down. And so I had a very tumultuous pregnancy. It was rough. So then he's born, and they're like, okay, sorry, our bad. He doesn't have Down. And I'm like, okay, we're in the clear. Yay, I can go back to planning our whole lives. And I had it all figured out. And then he gets diagnosed. And I'm glad you said that it's like grieving. And I had to go to therapy. I had postpartum bad.
Yeah.
And I went to therapy, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so much guilt? And why do I feel why am I harboring so much in my body? And why am I not okay? And she said, it's because you're grieving the life you thought you were going to have. And I had to grieve it. I had to bury it and let it go. And the moment I did, though, I was able to shift my attention to focus on him, and then giving him the best possible life.
Yeah.
God was like, you wanted him. He is yours. You're built for this. You're made for this. And so I knew I could handle it. What's interesting is, for me, I also found so much strength and power in him, though, that it made me hopeful.
Yeah.
In the same breath. But it was this weird dichotomy of, are we going to be okay, and what does this life look like? But all of this list tells you everything they cannot do, will not do. I was told he would never walk.
Yeah.
He would never talk. He would never have friends. He wouldn't graduate. He wouldn't. And it's I never asked God why. But I did ask, how do I steward this the best way I can for him? My hopes and my dreams for my sons, both of them, do not change. They don't alter because of a diagnosis or a special need. But at the same time, I want to give him the best life.
Best life. Yeah. Yeah. I remember the moment that I think that shifted everything for me was after Caleb got diagnosed. So he got diagnosed with autism in 2014. And then in 2015, our pediatrician, and I'm just so thankful for the pediatrician that I had, Dr. Robbins, because I know everyone doesn't have that experience. He saw something before, like he said something. I didn't have to come to him. He was like, I want to look into this. I want to look into this. And he also was like, I think we need to do more testing. I think it might be something more than autism. And I was like, no, like we had just gotten the diagnosis.
Like,
autism is enough. I was like, autism is enough. Just let me get through this. Yeah. And if there's anything else, like just give me a minute.
Yeah.
And so he brought it back up and he said, Megan, I need you to take him to do this blood test. And I'm like, okay, fine. So take him to Children's Hospital. We do this blood test. And then they call us probably a couple weeks later. And they bring us to the hospital. Here we go. Yeah. Right. Caleb has Fragile X syndrome. And so now it's a whole nother thing on top of autism. And Caleb because he was nonverbal, what we didn't know also is that he had, since he was born, he had always had chronic ear infections. But come to find out, he had 93% fluid built up in his ears. So he wasn't hearing anything for the first 2.5 years of his life. 90%, over 90% of his hearing was blocked, right? And they don't just go put tubes in. They have to have so many ear infections before we even get to the point of putting tubes in their ear. So mind you, he's nonverbal. He hasn't been hearing anything for 3 years. Now we have Fragile X syndrome, which is a dysfunction in the X chromosome, and his brain doesn't have the protein that produces brain development. His body doesn't have the protein that produces brain development. So, and Caleb would just scream a lot, just cry a lot, but it was like screaming cry. Yeah. And I couldn't get him comfortable one day, and I'm sitting on the floor, and Jonah is the baby, and Eli's a 4-year-old, and he's running around, and Jonah's crawling around, and Caleb is just screaming and screaming, and I can't get him calm. So I'm just sitting on the floor, and I put him in my lap, and I just start bawling. It was like, I'm tired. Yep. I don't know what to do. Yep. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. Yep. And just pure exhaustion. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting in the living room, and he's sitting in my lap, and I'm rocking him. And I'm just like, God, why? See, I did ask why. I said, why? Why? Like, if anything, you could have afflicted me. Just don't like,
that might be
not him. Yeah. Because he didn't ask to be here. Yep. And I brought him here. I know I forced him. I begged God for this baby. So it's like, it's not his fault. Give it to me. Whatever. You can give me whatever sickness. Just don't give it to him. Mm-hmm. Don't just take this from him. And I just kept asking, why? And God was very, I wish I could say that he was really gentle, but he was still kind, mm-hmm. but he wasn't gentle in his response. And he was like, why not you? Why do you think you're exempt from this? Why do you think that you're exempt from going through this? Because if you believe that I know the plans that I have for you, and I know the plans that I have for Caleb, and he knows the plans that he has for Sarah, right. and he knows the plans that he has for Josiah, why not you? Yeah. If I brought you to it, I'll bring you through it. Why not you? Right. For this is for my glory. That's mm-hmm. all he said. Yeah. And then he stopped talking. Yep. This is for my glory. And so I was like, okay, God, you need to show me in your word, because if it's in his word, then I know for a fact Correct. It will come to pass. Correct. I'm like, okay, show me in your word. And he brought me to this scripture, and I don't know what the scripture is off the top of my head, but it was the disciples saw a boy, and I guess he was mute, and he had some sort of dysfunction, or some sort of, he kind of was described like a special needs child, it seemed. And the disciples are like, well, who sinned? Was it the mom or the dad? Who sinned? And Jesus said, neither the mother or the father sinned, but this is for my glory. And God told me, before I even looked up the scripture, he told me, why not you? Why do you think you're exempt from this? This is for my glory. And then I went and searched it out in scripture, and he said, this is for my glory. And so I had to hold on to that and believe that whatever it was, whatever the reason, it was for his glory. I may not know the why, but I know it was for his glory, right? And that was the thing that set forth me expressing myself, talking about my experience. And it's the reason why we're sitting here today.
Same. I mean, you and I talk about this quite often. If it's not for Josiah, I don't do any of what I do.
Yeah.
I don't get on Instagram. I am an introvert.
Yeah.
I have no desire to be in front of the camera. I had no desire to start a podcast. I had no desire to talk about the parts of my life that can be hurtful and shameful, and the parts of me that hurt. And no, if it's not for Josiah, I don't go into venture capital. If it's not for Josiah, I don't do any of it.
And it's when you think back on it, you're like, you start to see how. You start to see like, okay, God, I understand. It didn't feel good.
No.
It doesn't feel good.
No.
And the type of, and I know that you can relate to this because we talked about this a little bit, but you were like, admitting that you're angry with God.
Yeah.
Like I had to have some hard conversations.
God and I are like this with these conversations. I don't play. I'm like, my boy, I don't want to be your strongest soldier. When did I sign up for the war? I don't want to be here. And you're throwing me on the front lines.
What?
Like, Lord, no. Get somebody else to do it.
Get somebody else. You know how quickly I would get a 9-to-5?
Baby,
and sit down?
No.
And live my little comfortable life?
And what's interesting is that's the life that I thought I would have.
Same.
And now that's not the life I desire.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
At all. But it's, and it's interesting because I think there's this negative connotation when they say like, you're not supposed to be mad at God and you're not supposed to be angry.
Yeah, right.
No, dog, he is my father, right? We need to talk. Let's have a conversation. This ish hurts.
This hurts. This is pain.
And you're hitting me in the one place that would hurt me the most.
That will take me out.
Child. The one area that could break me the most is my children. Everything else, I don't care. Everybody else is, they're people, they're humans, whatever.
Yeah.
Even in my marriage, it could have broke me, but it didn't. Because at the end of the day, I also had to remember, like, Christ didn't die just for me.
He died for that one too.
He died for him too.
Yep. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
I had to go to therapy and have a lot of conversations with my pastor about that one. But it also led me to forgiveness quicker for that very reason, which we can talk about later. But having those hard conversations with God of like, I'm mad. Yeah. I'm not mad at you, but I am mad and I'm hurt and I'm frustrated and I don't know what to do. And for someone like me who's got her life planned out 3 years, 5 years, that's why I said one of the biggest lessons I've learned over the course of the last 3 years in particular is I'm not in control and surrendering my need to control the outcome. Because then that's not faith. If I'm in control, and if I'm only making decisions where I know and can see the outcome, I think I'm God.
Sarah.
Because I don't need him at that point.
And that's the conversation that I don't think people are ready to have. The reality of, you think you're God. Okay. And God's had to check me. You think you God.
Okay. Go ahead, sis.
Go ahead. And when you make a mess of yourself, I'll be here. Go ahead.
Because I'm good. I'm a good father. And I'm like, Lord,
right back.
Sorry. I need you to fix this.
After you done messed it up.
Jacked it
all
fell
up.
on my face, busted my lip.
And that's what I'm saying. You God is still so kind that he'll let you fall. And it's so funny that I learned so much more about God's character as a father when I became a parent.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, now I know you as God the Father.
Yes.
And sometimes I think when people have not experienced parenting yet, you have a different level of revelation of God. And becoming a parent matures you in the spirit realm, like in the spiritual way, it matures you because you start to see like if I kept telling Eli to stay away from the stove, at one point, I'm gonna let him touch it.
I'll let you.
Because my word isn't enough for you at this point. So now you got to experience some pain.
You want to see.
You want to see how hot it is. Go ahead. I bet you won't do it again. And I'm going to be there and put some ointment on you.
Correct.
Because I'm your mom and I love you. And and I'm going to put some ointment on. I'm going to put a Band-Aid on you, but I bet you ain't going to touch that fire again. And I'm going to let you do. And it's so crazy because I think I was talking to Jordan, the movie Ray, and Jamie Foxx played that character. But in the beginning, where he starts to go blind, there's this scene where his mom is in the kitchen and she's standing there and he's coming in the front door and he's like, Mom, he falls. He trips over something, he falls and he starts crying. And you can see her and she has this moment where she's like, I have to make a decision. And this decision will set forth his life forever. So either I build him up in strength by withdrawing my presence from him, or I can go and coddle him with my presence and he'll be dependent on my presence forever.
That is something I struggled with.
And she let him figure it out. And you saw he cried and then he kind of got up and he started to feel his way. And then he got around and then he stopped and says, Mommy, I hear you. You're right there. He got closer to her as he searched for her. He said, Mommy, I hear you're right there. And then he found her. She didn't move. He found her and he touched her face and he said, it's okay. Like he can see. And at that moment, when you have a child with special needs, it hits you so hard because I have had those moments where I've had to let Caleb fail. I had to let him hurt himself. I had to let him be in pain. I had to frustrate him because I knew what he was capable of. And God does the same with us. He's like, it might feel like his presence is withdrawal, but it's not. He's there the whole time, but he might need to build some character in you to get you to where you need to go.
I can't tell you how many times I've had the conversation in the last 3.5, 4 years with God, where there were moments I was like, you said, now for reference, I'm a PK. So I have had Christ throughout my life. I've like lived in the Word, Bible study, 7 days a week was church.
And you're East African.
I'm Ethiopian.
Yeah,
so I'm like African.
I'm like,
we be in church for like 9 hours.
I'm like, Ethiopians do not play. Especially Orthodox Christian Ethiopians do not play.
We don't at all. And so what I find really interesting is in my darkest moments, which is, so I'm gonna be honest. In my darkest moments, the conversations I had with God was like, why did you forsake me? What did I do?
What did I do? Oh my God.
What sin have I done? I'm not perfect. I know that I'm not. I don't have it all figured out. But
what did I
do to deserve this? What did I do? Like, bro, help me. Where did you go? And every single time I asked that question, I would get it was almost immediate response of, I'm right here.
Wow.
But like you said, he had to let me fall. I thought I was in control of my life. I was in control of my marriage. Thought I was in control as a mother. Thought I was in control of me. And I wasn't. And the level of surrender that was required. God was like, enough. Are you tired yet?
Have you had enough?
Have you had enough? I'm asking, why did you forsake me? He's like, I didn't. You've been running.
Because he says, I'll never leave you, but he doesn't promise that we'll ever leave him. He says, I'll never leave you or forsaking you, but we can leave him.
And how long are you going to keep going? How long are you going to make decisions? How long do you think that you are the ruler of your life? How long do you think you can ordain your own steps? And now you're tired and now you're looking at me and he's on the sideline like,
I'm here. Just give it to me. Yeah.
And in that darkest moments was also the most peace I've ever had once I surrendered it though. So while I was going through my divorce, and by the way, y'all, I was on the internet every single day.
Going through a divorce.
Dying internally. And the hardest part about divorce is you are grieving not only the life you thought you were going to have, you are grieving this situation.
All of it.
Divorce is like, is death. You have to grieve it, but you also have to live. There's no ending to this. While still making sure that I don't uproot my children and making sure that they don't feel, trying to make sure that they have stability and grounding, and it has to come from me, but I can't give them that if I'm not grounded in my word, if I'm not grounded in my faith, if I'm not stable in my soul and my mind. The fact that I'm not in jail or girl,
What?
The fact that I'm not in jail or in a psych ward because of what I've dealt with in the last 3 years, that's all glory to God. And I wish I was being funny. The fact that I'm able to sit here and build the empire that I've built and done all the work that I've done, that is all God. Because I should have lost my darn mind.
Everything.
And what's crazy is I did. I lost everything. But I don't think I've listened to that many scriptures or listened to that many sermons, was in my word more, writing, therapy, meditation, breath work. Because all of a sudden I was getting like panic attacks in the middle of the night. I was having anxiety in my sleep. It was wild. But also the second I started to dive into my faith was the calmest I've been. So people were like, how are you doing so well? And by the way, I didn't tell nobody.
So you're going through all of this in silence.
I didn't tell a soul.
Did your family know?
I didn't tell a soul. It was like 18 months before I told my parents. I didn't tell a soul. When I say that I was dying internally. And still showing up. And God was like, you still have to show up. You have a responsibility to show up. In this moment, it's not about you. You have a testimony to tell. I will get you through it. But you are going to require me in this process.
Yeah.
If you do it on your own, you will self-destruct.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you shared that, because coming out of divorce, I wish I would have kept a lot of things to myself. I wish I didn't say a lot of things. I wish I would have gotten in therapy a lot sooner.
Yeah.
I got into therapy once I moved in this house. So back in May, I started therapy because everything came crashing down in my life at that point. But I wish I would have gotten in therapy. I wish that was like the one person that I told everything to and then told no one else anything else. Yeah, because the emotions that you're feeling, these up and downs, and, I just wish I would have kept a lot of things to myself more.
And let me be clear, I don't necessarily know if that's the right thing to do for everyone, but it was the right thing for me.
For you, yeah.
The only person I did talk to, my first call was actually a therapist. And then I didn't want to bleed on my children.
Yeah.
I didn't want to bleed in my healing, in the midst of my healing. Yeah. And I knew it was going to take me a minute. This is somebody that I had been with since I was 18. So I've known this person I don't know any other life. And so I did not want to project my anger and my frustration and my, the disrespect, all of it. I didn't want to put that on my children. I didn't want to put the onus on them to heal me or to be a part of that. And so I just kept it to myself. And I knew, because then if I talked, then what? Then people would either try to talk me out of it, but it was too late for that. I did not need any outside noise.
Voice. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's wisdom. I think that a lesson that I feel like, and which is why it's important that we come together and have these conversations to help other people, because I know that we're not the only ones who experience this, but finding the balance in both responses. You know what I mean? Yeah. I know for me, it would have probably have been better if I would have just were in therapy and had one person to talk to, than to bleed out on my friends, to bleed out on family. And then another really toxic trait that I have is withdrawal. I withdraw.
Yeah.
So when I am going through things, I emotionally withdraw.
Yeah.
So I just retreat all the way back.
Yeah. I isolate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I can be sitting here with you, but I'm isolated. Like, I'm just completely, it's like I'm not even here.
Yeah.
And you become this like weird shell of yourself.
Correct.
While you're going through it. And even when you come out of it a little bit, there's a process in that. But if I'm being honest, I wish I wouldn't have said anything. I wish I wouldn't have gave so many details to people that wouldn't even be in my life a year later.
Yeah.
I wish I wouldn't have, I wish I would have kept some of those very personal things to myself and with a therapist. And that way you have the stability, I guess, mental stability to actually go get through the divorce.
Right.
Because what people don't understand is you take all this strength to get to that point.
And it takes a lot.
And it takes so much. I don't think I was prepared for the after because I was just so worried about getting out of it that I wasn't prepared for what came, like coming into this house and all the responsibilities and the feelings. And like, I didn't miss him personally, but like I missed him because he wasn't here.
Yeah.
Like all those things, like you weren't, like you just don't, you're not prepared for.
See, and I thought, so I'll give you a different perspective is, so I did the therapy. I did it for a year. Felt good. I'm like, I'm healed. I'm good. Then I moved to LA, by my house, like you said, by myself, just the kids. And I looked around and I was like, I need to be in therapy again. So moving on for the after required me to go to therapy because also I don't know this version of me.
I don't know who I am.
I don't know who I am anymore. Who is this person?
Who is this person? Yeah.
I'm 36. I was with someone from 18 to 32, and then the pandemic happened. So I'm going through a divorce during the pandemic. I'm dealing with all of that.
Were you guys in the same house?
Not initially. And then we decided to quarantine together for the kids' sake. So it was a very, very, very strange. And we weren't living together. So we went from not living together and separated to needing to make a decision for the kids' sakes because we're like, where's dad?
Yeah.
But yeah, like even this after portion of my life has required me to go back into therapy to navigate, like, what do I want?
Yeah.
What do I want?
Yeah.
What makes me happy?
Yeah.
Who am I now? And I get to do life
again. Yeah.
I get to do it again.
Yeah. And it's kind of scary sometimes, but it's exciting.
It is, but it's also very exciting.
Yeah. I think once you get through the healing, it becomes more exciting.
Yeah.
Because you're out of that like really intense pain that it comes with initially.
Yeah.
And then there's so much hope for a new start, you know. But how do you navigate with co-parenting? Like, how is co-parenting? All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We will see you guys next week for part 2. If you want to know what it's like to co-parent, then be back next week with Sara Lovestyle for part 2 of our interview together. So I love you guys, and I'll see you guys next week.